Okay, I think it's working. The last time I tried going straight into it, it cut off my intro, but it seems we're now going. Greetings, viewers. Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Geek News Reviews and Opinions. Yeah, it's been a while. I'm sure a lot of you will probably let us know how long it's been since we were, but life kind of got in the way, but the stars aligned. We managed to make enough sacrifices of gnome goats, and so here we are to discuss, well, all that has happened during the brief times we were away. For those of you who are new here, I am Stephen Romney. I am the host for this episode, filling in for Adam Mickelson, who survived the Battle of Diaper Hill, made it through the siege of Bottle Valley, and is now currently waging a skirmish on Medication Mountain. And so he unfortunately could not join us tonight, and so we are gathering in his stead to talk about, well, the past few weeks worth of nerdy news stories in both the tech and entertainment industries. And I am not alone, as you could tell by the elicited giggles from my two compatriots, who are fellow YouTubers, fellow critics, fellow all-around good people whose content you should really, really, really check out. Just going down the panel, we're going with the other common recurring member of our panel, Alex the Shadow Blazer Short. I think it's Shadow Blazer 3000, who has decided to join us out of the shadows of his Princess Principal posters, because yes, I actually know what those are from. Alex, how are you doing tonight?
Not bad, I guess. Busy week, of course, as always, and busy day also because I had a longer work day. But hey, I'm here, I'm alive, and just one day at a time, right?
Yep, especially as I'm sure many Games of Thrones fans are probably saying right now, winter is coming.
Winter is indeed coming.
And also joining us tonight is our regular panelist, although not as regular. He has graciously decided to grace us with his present, Brinton Pyle Valley. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing okay.
Well, okay is good, better than bad.
Yeah, that's the best I can do tonight.
Yes, and it's probably going to be what we'll need, because we've got a lot of can of worms that we've had to open in order to create a full agenda tonight, because it's almost like the world was set on fire or something. But to start things on a bit of a lighter note, we're going to go into tonight's top story. It's a bit of an older story that dropped last week, but is one of the sillier offerings we have for this week. Now, this article comes to us from gamesindustry.biz, and is specifically talking about, well, to give you the basic rundown, I'm pulling it up right now if my browser is willing to cooperate, which it sometimes does, sometimes doesn't. All right, so here's something that we've all been noticing. Esports has become pretty popular. A lot of people have been tuning in, the streams, the tournaments. It's become a money-making endeavor. However, some people don't take too kindly to the fact that esports have now become popular. So much so that they are now staging various protests. Although the location of these protests leaves, well, a lot of confusion. This occurred in Europe, because of course it does, because this is where a certain sport by the name of soccer, or football if you're in Europe, is quite popular, more popular than here in the States, although that's been starting to change. Now, as reported by the Associated Press, this occurred, I believe this was a game between the Young Boys and FC Basel, where the football match for the Swiss Super League was delayed for 2 minutes as fans of both teams carried out a protest against esports, which included throwing tennis balls and game consoles onto the field, and also unfurling a banner, which is a giant black pause sign. Now, as for the nature of this protest, where it comes from is that although the Young Boys team doesn't have an actual esports affiliate, FC Basel does, and actually has an offshoot that competes at FIFA tournaments throughout the world. And so, I just have to wonder, before going into my opinions, what are you guys thinking? Are you kind of starting to see this sort of divide between fans of traditional sports and esports, or do you find this whole thing to be kind of silly?
Who wants to go first? Because I think this is I think it's kind of silly. Like, let people enjoy what they want to enjoy and let them compete how they want to compete. I'm trying to figure out how to segue into what came to mind while you were talking, Romney. But there was this yeah, I guess there's not any real good segue, but something that came to mind was this comic I was reading on Instagram, and it was of these two brothers, and one of the brothers is enjoying like a snack while watching somebody stream a game on Twitch. And so his brother's just like, you're wasting your time watching other people play video games. Like, this is so stupid. Why don't you just play the video game, etc., etc., etc. And his brother came up with a pretty good reason. I mean, I'm going to have to paraphrase, and I'm probably going to put in some of my own reasons for watching people on Twitch and even watching like Let's Plays and stuff. And ultimately, it kind of just, his response boils down to like, I don't have the money for the game. I want to kind of see how the game plays before I do buy it, if I do have the money. And ultimately, I just want to see how this person plays the game, whether or not they think it's hilarious or bad or etc. You know, get some entertainment, free entertainment. And so his brother criticizes him and tells him just like, you know, you're dumb. You shouldn't be wasting your time doing stuff like this. And then the very last, and he accentuates the fact that, he should probably be the one playing video games instead of watching other people play video games. And then the last panel shows said brother who's criticized him enjoying a snack while watching football, American football. And and to me, that's just like a beautiful representation of people who are just like esports and streamers and all the stuff that we're very much into is lame and stupid and a waste of time, because we should just why should we waste our time? Nobody's going to bother watching it. And then it's like, okay, well, don't you do the same exact thing with like sports and all the other, all the things that aren't considered geeky, but to you are geeky? That's how I'm looking at this. I think, I don't know. It's silly. I feel it's immature. I'm bothered. It's just dumb.
Yeah, it reminds me of this video. To kind of add to that, there's this channel called Core A Gaming. They focus on fighting games, and they actually made a pretty compelling video that talks about why fighting esports is actually better than real combat sports, and kind of listing, oh, well, the two competitors don't suffer debilitating brain damage. They can fight immediately after a fight's concluded, which means you can get more fights in a single event. And it's a pretty compelling video that kind of reiterates that, but in a way that's like, hey, here's why esports should probably be more embraced, because you're no longer having people ending up with pugilist dementia, or scientific term, chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's been so much research and just in July, I had a very minor traumatic brain injury, very minor. I'm not trying to talk it up big at all. I had a very, very, very small concussion because I triggered my vagus nerve while drinking water, and I passed out while at work, and I fell out of my seat and I hit my head. But even just the week that I had a concussion, it was not fun. And I'm definitely seeing the side effects of having said brain injury. Is it as serious as those who suffer major concussions in American football? No. Is it as terrible as people who do have are diagnosed with dementia, or who have had strokes and other really bad traumatic brain injuries? No. Definitely not. Again, mine was extremely minor, but I still have side effects from it. I have immense trouble remembering simple things that have happened minutes ago. And it frustrates me because I'm a type of person who took pride in how well I could retain information. And I just struggle to do that so much now. And it sucks. So if that's just what comes from a minor brain injury, think about stroke survivors or people who, American football players,
look at
MMA fighters.
Yeah, look at what happened to Muhammad Ali at the end of his life, where he had the shakes pretty much all the time.
Exactly. I get that go watch, a football game because it's football season, or soccer, or baseball, or basketball. I get that's a thing that people love to go see and do, and occasionally I like to go mix and mingle and participate in the fun as well, even if I don't really know what's going on all the time. Like, I get it, because I feel like I'm a reasonable, common sense type person, and it's like, I enjoyed watching the Overwatch League, and I realized that I could easily play Overwatch whenever I so please. But it's fun to watch these pro players play. That's something that I enjoy. So I'm not going to sit here and bash people who enjoy watching physical contact sports, but I will sit here and defend my esports when you tell me that it's stupid and dumb, and the real manhood comes in those physical contact sports, because it's like, oh, I'm so sorry that you're watching some of your favorite people literally lose their minds.
Yes, indeed. And to kind of get back on points, as we went on a bit of a tangent here,
My bad.
Alex, what are your thoughts on this protest, and kind of, is it a sign of like growing tensions between fans of traditional sports and esports? What's your take on all this?
There might be a bit of that rift kind of starting to build between fans of old-fashioned traditional sports and fans of esports. I guess it's just the inevitability. Anything that's new always has a blowback. It's just a weird time and place to protest it, considering it was at a really typical soccer game, and not an actual esports tournament. And all because apparently you said the other team has an esports equivalent, yeah?
Yes, FC Basel. And looking at the full story, this protest occurred in Bern, Switzerland. So this was a Swiss soccer game for the Swiss league. And so FC Basel actually has an esports offshoot that competes in FIFA tournaments. So
Yeah.
this is using the FIFA game made by EA.
So that's even more of a weird thing. It's like you're protesting. I mean, I don't even know why they're protesting it other than they just don't like it. But it's like, but you're protesting at the actual game where this team that you're playing against is there playing the game because, well, apparently you think your game is obviously superior or better or just overall more of a, quote unquote real sport than these silly esports. So it's such a weird, that's why it's so silly. It's just like, what a weird time and place to protest it. I could see this being protested at like an actual esports tournament, somebody running up on stage and just shouting, "You guys suck," but they chose to do it in an actual real soccer match here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the strange thing. I mean, on the one hand, I can see the logic. It's like, okay, well, there's a team here that has an esports offshoot, but especially considering that it's people who support both teams taking part in this, it's weird, to say the least. Now, as for my own thoughts on it, to kind of echo Brenton's sentiment, it's kind of silly. I mean, really silly. You're staging this protest at an event of the actual sport itself, and not more of an esports venue. And honestly, it's very much what are they hoping to accomplish? Are they going to suddenly hope that, oh, we're going to suddenly abandon all esports, or that FC Basel is going to suddenly like kill its esports offshoot? That would just be dumb. It wouldn't make financial sense, most of all, because I mean, looking at FC Basel, that's probably how they're keeping themselves relevant in the case of, okay, well, we've got people who may not necessarily like to watch the real soccer, but they realize, hey, there's money to be made in these esports streams, so let's actually try to get people on board and basically have that money go to our football club. And I'm surprised that we're not seeing entities here in the US doing that thing. I mean, imagine if Real Salt Lake decided to start a whole offshoot where, okay, it's the Real Salt Lake FIFA team that plays in the EA FIFA tournaments, and they just represent Real Salt Lake. That would actually be pretty cool.
That would be super cool. I would like to watch that.
I think the sponsorship deals would be definitely big endorsement deals.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, and FIFA's already involved with EA. I mean, honestly, it would be perfect because we literally have an EA office here in Utah. For people who are wondering what I'm talking about, hi, we're from Utah. That's where we're all recording. And in our city, we actually have an office for EA Games that used to be Maxis, the company behind SimCity. And so if they were to do such a sponsorship, that would be ideal because you're advertising your local soccer team and a company that works in Utah. I mean, I mean, EA, Real Salt Lake, if you're listening or watching this, come on. I don't even ask for payment. Just do this idea. It's foolproof.
Brilliant. Let's do it. Let's see it happen, guys. Real, EA.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Well, speaking of foolproof ideas, that brings us to our next story, which is actually from this week. Although whether or not it's foolproof, people are kind of in debate, as there were a series of leaks that occurred during the week regarding a particular franchise surrounding a boy wizard. Now, the initial story of the leak was that there was a rumored game being made in the Harry Potter universe. The initial rumor and the initial leaks were alleging that this game was being made by Rocksteady Games, the company that is owned by Warner Brothers Entertainment and is the company behind the first two Arkham games, or I believe was it all of them. I know that we were told that they were done by all, that they did all except one of them, but back on point, that there were rumors of Rocksteady Games making an open world role-playing game set in the world of Harry Potter. Now, since then, it's been clarified that there is a Harry Potter game in development, but that it's not being made by Rocksteady Games, but oddly enough, bringing it again back to a local game company, Avalanche Studios. That was a name I did not expect to hear, and I'm sure our friend Aldo will be really happy to hear that as well. But yeah, apparently there is, and the sources have leaked that apparently there's a new Harry Potter game that's going to be set in the 16th century, so this is before the events of the novels, that is at present purported to be some sort of role-playing game that happens to be set in the Harry Potter universe. I'm going to pull up the official image that we still have, because there's still a lot that we don't know, and so far this is the only image we have from it. Let me pull that up and see if this toolbox thing is going to work. There it is. Come on, cooperate with me. Doing it live, people, doing it live. And it seems it does not want to cooperate.
Oh dear.
All right. Well, for those who are listening to the podcast after the fact, since I don't seem to be able to pull up and share the image because for some reason the screen share won't work in my browser, it appears to be an image of a Hogwarts student interacting with some sort of gigantic magical creature. It doesn't appear to be a hostile one, so it's hard to say what it actually looks like. It looks like kind of like a giant deer made of metal, or a dragon maybe. I'm probably not doing the description justice, but from the looks of it, it actually does look pretty impressive for an upcoming AAA title. And so that's so far all we know so far, is that it's a game being made by Avalanche, which was acquired by Warner Brothers Interactive after their closure, because as some of you may know, Avalanche Games, they were the company behind Disney Infinity back in the day before that got kiboshed, and since then they've gone from Disney to Warner Brothers. And so that is what we know so far. Nothing's been officially announced, and this is a leak, so there's a lot of details that have to be taken with a grain of salt. So let's go around the panel here. If either one of you step in, what do you guys think about this leaked Harry Potter game? Are you excited? Are you cautious? Are you curious? What is your take?
Definitely curious. It's been a long time since I've played any Harry Potter games. Probably not since the GameCube days, and I loved playing those when they were on the GameCube. I don't recall how far. I think I only played up through Azkaban. Yeah. So I've been really hoping for some kind of new Harry Potter game, and to kind of see this one, if true, being sort of set outside the main canon, outside the Harry Potter story itself, but in the same universe, especially on the heels of the Fantastic Beasts series that we got going on. This could be really pretty cool, I think, if it all turns out to be real, or turns out to be pretty good. I'm not quite sure how the RPG mechanics will work. I mean, that will just have to be seen when it's seen. I'm a little surprised we haven't gotten any kind of official announcement yet that this is really coming through leaks, because, again, we are on the heels of a new Fantastic Beasts movie, so it seems like it'd be really good cross-promotion here, but I really want to know more. I want to see where this goes.
Yes, and to be fair, I think maybe the reason they're holding off, and I misspoke, it's not the 16th century, but the 19th century, My theory as to why they may be holding off is that maybe this could be part of a tie-in for a different series of films set in the Wizarding World, which is the official umbrella brand for the Fantastic Beasts films and any other Harry Potter-related merchandise and media that is basically outside of the main 7 books. It's hard to keep track of 8 movies, 7 books, but anyway, and so my theory, kind of going to why they may be sitting on it, is that maybe they're waiting until the Fantastic Beasts films run their course, and maybe they're either waiting to kind of have it tie into a new set of films, or maybe they're going to wait and to see, okay, let's make sure that The Crimes of Grindelwald actually does well enough at the box office, because that is also a bit of a risk, considering some of the PR nightmare stuff Warner Brothers had to deal with during production.
Yeah, there's a bit of a mess going on with that right now, but I still think it'll do okay.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah, and I'm just definitely curious, like you. I'm curious about what we'll see, because this is the 19th century, so this would be the 1800s. So this would be before Dumbledore, or for all we know, they could probably be pulling a Yoda and basically having us focus on a younger Dumbledore than what we're seeing in the Fantastic Beasts movie, which could work again, because I'm not sure if the books actually stated how old Dumbledore is during the events of the main series, but well, I mean,
I can take a quick look here.
Yeah, because if crimes,
that's like a super easy Google search. How old is Albus Dumbledore?
He was born summer 1881, so depending on when they said it.
All right. Well, when you consider. Yeah, so it would be late 19th century, because they get their letter at around 10 years old. So 1881, that would be 1891 when he would get his Hogwarts letter. So, but then again, that doesn't quite work, because the idea, at least from the premise, is that you're playing a character who comes in as a 5th year as a late arrival. So you probably wouldn't be playing as Dumbledore, but you probably would have a good chance of possibly encountering him at that time period, if it's that late in the time period, as maybe a 1st year, or maybe that'll be a teaser at the end of the game where you see Dumbledore first coming to Hogwarts, which, again, kind of cool.
And at the game, especially if the game does, assuming it's a contained game, not something like an MMO they're trying at, which there's nothing to say it is, that might be perfect sequel hook right there, is sort of like, okay, now Dumbledore is up next in the next game.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible, and for all we know, they could even go kind of the Sony Spider-Man route, where it's a case of, oh, hey, it's set in the universe, but they were given license to tell their own story, which honestly may be for the best. I mean, as much as we all love J.K. Rowling, there are some aspects that she does a lot better. So stuff that's set in England, that's self-contained like the original books, she does a really good job with. Trying to write a fictional history set in America, on the other hand, as we've covered before, not her strong suit. All right, so Brenton, how about you? Where are you standing on kind of what we've seen and heard so far regarding this leaked Harry Potter game?
I'm very much on the same page as Alex. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. I enjoy a good RPG, so I'm pretty much just kind of on the fence, waiting to see more information when the time is right for the developer to share said information. And I'm just looking forward to seeing how all this pans out and what we will get with this game. I personally think this is a great time to start developing a new Harry Potter game, just with the success, well, in my personal opinion, the success of Fantastic Beasts, and the fact that the Harry Potter universe is being kind of like reopened from a different point of view. And so this is a great time to revisit and delve into other aspects of the universe. Because I mean, everybody really, really loved this franchise, and I love how J.K. Rowling has kept it alive, how she makes it seem like it's just very parallel and happening right along beside us as if it's a real thing. And I think it's cool that we're returning back into it. So I look forward to seeing what will come from this.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, because I'm not as much of a diehard fan. I did enjoy the movies when they came out. I have yet to actually try reading any of the books, mostly because, well, sitting down and reading, many people may think, oh, reading is easy, but actually reading and enjoying a novel, it's a skill that you have to practice, and I have not practiced it. This coming from the guy who does the Romney's Reading Club.
But yeah, I get a little ADD when I try to read novels too. Even when I read manga, I tend to get distracted easily.
Yes, and so looking at like some of the details here, so we know so far, according to this leak, it's the 19th century. You're playing a fifth year student, so like year 5, that would put you at about, I'd say 14, 15 years old, I think, because that's if I'm doing the math right,
I think
because I know
about
with
16, probably about 16, because Harry's 14 in Goblet of Fire, so that I knew that was year 4, so probably about 15, 16.
yeah, and so pretty much typical age of your typical RPG protagonist. I mean, looking at the pattern here. And looking here, it's like saying, oh, you'll be able to curse and possibly kill wizards and goblins, choose from 8 character classes, and either act good or evil. So it looks like if these leaks are to be believed, they may be going for something that's basically the Mass Effect of the Harry Potter universe. Now, whether or not this will just lead to an ending where everything basically ends the same way no matter what you do, that remains to be seen. I mean, Warner Brothers is not EA, but Warner Brothers also doesn't have the greatest track record. Case in point, Hogwarts Mystery.
Yeah.
Yes, and so that's it for the leaked Harry Potter game. We're all clearly excited, but again, too early to tell. These are leaked from anonymous sources that were posted to the internet, and apparently there was a video that showed footage of the game that has since been taken down. And so there's still a lot that's there's still a lot that's yet to be disclosed about this game, and so we will follow it as it develops. Now, from that high note, we'll unfortunately have to go back into Downer Valley, as this next story is also unfortunate. At the very least, though, things are being somewhat resolved, but it's another bit of a downer regarding another figure in the gaming industry, particularly, well, events of his personal life that are starting to basically spill forward. This story, coming to us from PC Gamer, revolves around Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford, who apparently was scammed out of nearly $3 million by someone who was hired as a personal assistant. Now, looking at the full detail, because apparently this had gone to trial, or at least they'd gone to some sort of lawsuit. Okay, there's the details. So apparently this is in the wake of a $2 million judgment against the personal assistant, John Wright Martin, who has since disappeared and hasn't paid into that settlement. Now, according to both Randy Pitchford and his wife Christy, they hired this man back in 2014 to act as a personal assistant, and he began charging a number of expenses to their business accounts, writing checks in their name, making donations to charity. Basically, he was having a little spending spree for himself on their dime. And apparently, it's not limited just to Randy Pitchford, but also to other people that the Pitchfords know, including one former friend of Pitchford. I'm looking up the name right here. And so another person by the name of Matthew Worthen has also lost money because of this man's manipulations. This man, last name Martin, had also been convicted of fraud for writing bad checks. So, yikes! There's not too much else to say. It looks like that they took him to court and they were awarded a $2 million settlement. But since the ruling was handed down, Martin has since disappeared. So I'll go ahead and open this up to the panel. What are your guys' thoughts on the CEO of Gearbox having been scammed out of this much money by one conniving a-hole?
What a bummer. That's so terrible. That's a lot of money.
Indeed.
That's impressive. I mean, I mean, you got to give credit to this dude. I'm not saying what he did was right, because no, it's what he did is absolutely horrible. But I mean, you got to give him credit.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you consider this guy knew what he was doing. He spread himself in what he was spending, as the purchases included clothing, jewelry, electronics, Amazon movie rentals, as well as other mundanities. But then there was also a $591,000 home that he purchased in a wealthy neighborhood in San Francisco, and also donated $10,000 to the Trevor Project charity. I can't talk tonight, and also forged at least 7 checks on Christy Pitchford's accounts worth more than $73,000 alone. So apparently, this isn't this guy's first rodeo. Now, looking here for the media question that a lot of people are probably wondering is, does this affect Gearbox? According to the article, this was Pitchford's personal funding that was affected, but apparently Gearbox, the company, did not lose any money. Oops, excuse me. Apparently, Gearbox did not lose any money as a result of this. The money that was lost was mainly taken from their personal accounts, as well as the accounts for their restaurant, Nerdvana Frisco, which is a restaurant and coffee shop owned by Christie. And they realized something was going on when they realized that they didn't have enough money to pay their employees. And that was how they knew that this guy was doing something he probably should not have been doing.
That really sucks.
Indeed.
Yeah, Alex said it best. I mean, that sucks.
Yes, and apparently there is a statement from the man himself, as he told, as I keep forgetting the guy's full name. It's one of those usual 3 first name sort of names, so it's hard. But according to John Wright Martin, his official statement to the Dallas News, as told through Facebook, is that he states that there is much more to this story than me being charged for crimes I did not commit. But he did not follow through on any promised interview and has not responded to any further comment. So he's probably hoping he can lie low and let this whole thing blow over. But when you're talking those types of dollars and cents, it's not going to happen. Look what happened to Shkreli.
Yeah. Looks like he skipped bail on a couple of other criminal charges here, apparently for drunk driving and his check fraud.
Yeah, it reminds of, it almost like feels like one of those like premises of like that Leonardo DiCaprio movie Catch Me If You Can, of like the con artist who just kept conning his way into different jobs and was chased all across the country.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real Frank Abagnale story right here.
Indeed. Except for the fact that this affects real people, and it's also not particularly a good thing, because, yeah, it may be a fascinating story, but when it happens to you, it sucks.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, Abagnale just circled a lot of bad checks. This dude's actually stealing from people.
Indeed. And hopefully he will have his day in court. Who knows? Especially with crimes like these, it's a lot hard. Although once you get them in court and have, like, this is both a crime that is both hard to pin on someone, but also easy to pin on someone when you actually have documentation. To kind of go into lawyer mode a little bit, I mean, the best case in point is that how they took down Al Capone was not because of all of the other activities. They got him on tax evasion. And so this is something that it can be kind of hard to prove, but at the same time, this is also why forensic accounting is a thing. Yes, there are such things as forensic accountants for people who did not know. And
I believe it.
Yes, and so it's my hope. I mean, my thoughts do go out to Pitchford and his wife. It sucks when someone defrauds you of so much money that makes it so that you can't pay your employees. And I'm not sure what type of cost of living they're dealing with, but given that it's California, it's
and San Francisco.
Yeah, it's San Francisco of all cities.
Oh yeah, that really sucks. One thing that comes to mind, does Gearbox apparently not have background checks?
Well, at the same time, though, keep in mind, this wasn't an employee at Gearbox. This was specifically someone hired as Randy Pitchford's personal assistant, which is why Gearbox didn't experience any losses. It would be kind of the equivalent of someone hiring a butler for their own residence who basically somehow manages to steal all their stuff. So
no. That, like, if for some strange reason I was able to get my own personal assistant, like, we live in a time, and I don't mean to be negative about this, but we live in a time where, like, background check. Like, I'm not just going to hire somebody, be like, oh, you seem trustworthy. Like, I'm going to be skeptical, and I'm going to require a background check, and that person will not continue forward with employment if there's anything remotely sketchy, like, not even for one little second. But that's my own personal opinion. I feel like this is something that they should have done for themselves.
Likely, and again, and for all we know, this could have just been, like, for all we know, this guy could have been a very good manipulator. Maybe, I mean, for all we know, this guy may not even be giving his real name. I mean, well, that's also what I thought as I was forming together my opinion. I was like, oh,
I mean, they could have ran a background check, but it could have been a fake name. Like, he could have committed some form of identity theft, or like, there's a lot of other factors that do definitely go into it. So I apologize to interrupt, but I definitely like agree with what you were building up to. So like ultimately this is just a super unfortunate situation, and I really do feel bad this for this couple, because like just like Alex said at the beginning of this conversation, that sucks. It really, really does.
Indeed, and honestly, there's really no other way to put it aside from the fact that it sucks. And speaking of things sucking, it's time for a little segment I'd like to call Telltale Talk. Yes, instead of Nintendo Talk, we have Telltale Talk. As some of you may recall, when we were last on the air, we discussed the sudden closure and layoff of Telltale Games and its employees. And a lot has happened in the wake of it. Like, a whole lot. So much so that it took up a good chunk of our agenda.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even after the last time we were on air, I would say even an hour after, it was just like a crazy amount of information that dropped, and it's like, holy crap, what is happening?
Yes, and so to start with the first story, which is the oldest, but it kind of provides some nice context. In the wake of the sudden layoff of all of these employees, a former employee from Telltale Games has filed a class action complaint against the company in California's federal court. The main crux of the allegation is that the developer was obligated to provide 60 days notice of the impending layoff in compliance with the state's WARN Act. Now, to give you kind of a brief summary of a WARN Act, basically, and this was actually a law that was enacted in certain states in the wake of Filmation actually being, well, destroyed by L'Oreal of all companies. So,
L'Oreal, really?
Yeah, L'Oreal. They were the companies that killed Filmation, and the
because
reason
they're worth it.
Yes, or at least their IPs were worth it. I mean, to go on a bit of a tangent, to give you the short version, Filmation, the company behind He-Man, Brave Star, She-Ra, a lot of those classic 80s cartoons had changed hands numerous times. They were owned by Hallmark, they were owned by all these other companies, and the last owners were L'Oreal. And L'Oreal, upon acquiring Filmation, closed it down and sold off all the IP, just to turn around a quick profit. And they did so because they were trying to get it done before these laws underneath these WARN Acts actually went into effect. Now, what the WARN Act, at least under California law, alleges is that anytime you're about to do any sort of mass termination or even any major level of layoffs, you're required to give your employees a certain amount of notice, so that way they know, okay, I should start looking for another job. Okay, I should start, preparing to transition because I know my days here are numbered. Whereas, given how suddenly these employees at Telltale were dismissed, some having been there for only a week, with one of them having traveled cross-country to work for Telltale Games, literally being told the day the company was closing and given only 30 minutes to leave, that, according to this lawsuit, violates California's WARN Act, as they were not given any prior notice of their termination and could not adequately prepare for said termination. And so that is the main crux of this lawsuit that is being filed by this former employee. Now, although it doesn't state the name of the employee in question, the attorney for this employee is complaint filed by attorneys. Okay, so the employee who's actually filed the lawsuit is Vernie Roberts Jr. and is seeking missed wages, salaries, 401k contributions, and any other compensation that would have been earned during the 60-day period. The suit also names other parties, so this isn't just one person, but a group of employees who have joined onto this lawsuit, which could be as many as 275 employees, according to Kotaku, who were fired from Telltale last week. Now, there are some wiggle room to the exceptions of the WARN Act, and that will probably be the point of contention if this goes to trial, but that seems to be what the main argument of the lawsuit is that since Telltale did not give prior notice to any of the employees, they violated California's labor laws, and thus they are seeking compensation. All right, and so that's the first of the major development that has emerged in the wake of Telltale's closure. But the plot thickens, as there is also another interesting aspect where, and this was a story that morphed during this week alone, as the people who are still technically at Telltale are trying to find ways to finish The Walking Dead, the final season, which was planned to have 4 episodes, but only 2 have been completed, with the 3rd planned to be submitted for a ratings review by the ESRB. And, well, at first there were rumors of, they were looking to raise funds to finish the game. Now they're looking for specifically other companies to finish the game. But now the people who are still at Telltale are giving it yet another spin, where they're now looking for another company to hire these developers so they can finish The Walking Dead, the final season. Now, I'll hold off on going into my tangents about it, but where do you guys stand on what's gone on in the wake of this, for lack of a better term, clusterfuck?
Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first, Alex?
Okay, I'll go first.
Go for it.
In terms of maybe finishing The Walking Dead, I don't know. I feel like you need to get the rest of your house of affairs in order for what's left of Telltale's basic skeletal structure at this point. Because, well, you did fire all your employees at the last minute, and you hired some only to tell them while they were still in transition to get into the company, oh, sorry, guys, we don't really have a job for you after all. So I think trying to finish this game and for fan demand is the least of your worries right now.
Yeah, not to mention that these employees were not given any sort of severance pay either.
Yeah, that's also pretty scummy right there. I mean, Telltale's whole excuse was it's like these are not sustainable. Well, that's kind of your own damn fault, and now your employees and your staff are paying the price for it.
Indeed. Definitely, this is straight up managerial incompetence, but it also raises the question of what company is going to want to get involved to actually finish The Walking Dead at this point, because it's a PR nightmare for one, and two, a lot of the developers, thanks in large part to social media movements to get them in touch with other companies, have since started getting jobs at a lot of these other video game companies, and so they're not going to want to come back given the way in which they were dismissed. And so it's a case of what company is going to take on this sort of risk given how botched up the management of the property was.
Yeah, plus it's not just a simple matter of copying, pasting what's already done and adding on top of it. It could take an entire restructuring and recoding and rewriting of everything to get it done, because God knows what Telltale was, coding and working on at that point in between different engines, between different hardware and different studios. And of course, like you mentioned, all the former members of their team are likely scattered to the winds now, if not getting other jobs, or maybe not even just wanting to come back, maybe just deciding, you know what, this is not the business for me and I'm done. It's just, I think it's inconceivable to try and finish it.
Indeed, and at this point, a lot of people, and it's something that I've noticed in a lot of comments on social media discussing the issue, is that a lot of fans, even if they were able to finish it, that's not a guarantee people are actually going to buy it, because again, the well's kind of been poisoned with everything that's happened. It's kind of the same conundrum people found themselves in with the Phantom Pain, but it's definitely something that also came back to bite Konami with Metal Gear Survive, where all the bad blood, what is established with the fan base, they released a game, and no one bought. I mean, none of us here, at least as far as I know, even bothered looking into Metal Gear Survive, and that could be what could happen if they decide to finish these 2 episodes of The Walking Dead final season.
Yep.
Yeah, and so it's definitely unfortunate, but it was just fascinating to see just how crazy it has become in the wake of the closure, because many people thought it would be over and done with that, but nope. Apparently, the company still is running in a skeletal structure to finish what they agreed to finish, but it's messed up. I mean, as you said it earlier, Alex, it really sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. What I want to add on to that is, what do I want to say? It's not that I don't completely disagree with what you and Alex have already stated, but at the same time, I think it would be good for them to complete the final season of The Walking Dead, only for the fact that if you're like me, whenever I purchase episodic games, I will purchase all the episodes up front. I know that not everybody does that, they will purchase them as they are released. But for me, I will always purchase them up front. It's what I did with Life is Strange 2. It's what I have done with like all the Telltale games that I have purchased. It's what I've done with Life is Strange and Before the Storm. It's I think it's just what I do. And I know that a lot of other people do it. And so I personally think that would be fantastic just for them to finish it. So that way the people who have spent the money can get their money's worth. But at the same time, I do agree with what you both have said. And at this point, I feel like it just needs to be kind of like swept under the rug. And whoever like was writing the story can just be like, look, this is what was going to happen. These are the choices that you could have possibly made. These are like the outcomes that could have come from all those individual choices. Just kind of like give closure that way instead of trying to be hired on by other companies to complete the game or have another company actually complete it for them, because that just sounds like a freaking nightmare. It sounds horrendous. Like if I was in that situation where I'm like, okay, my company is now closing down, like I would just want to have everything just to be like I would just want all loose ends to be done and over with and just like move on, because very much like you two have said, and just pretty much the information that and all this horrible things that we have been seeing, it just appears like Telltale Games was not the studio that we thought we were. And I was like, and one thing that really annoyed me is that I'm flipping through Twitter and just seeing like all these video game reviewers and other like very successful video game-esque companies being like, wow, thank you for all these great years, Telltale. Like, what a shame. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, no, like I'm not going to sit here and be like, thank you so much, Telltale Games, because they were definitely going downhill. And you could tell by some of their more recent products. Go watch like anybody listening or like listening or watching live. I mean, this is kind of a shameless plug, but go watch my Let's Play of Telltale's Batman. Like that game, like towards the end in later episodes, the game kept crashing on me, and I have it have it happening in the Let's Play, and there were just like graphical errors. Things were like voice acting was completely out of sync to the models. It was just like the product was good in the beginning, and then by the end of it, my husband and I, who like did the Let's Play with me, we both were just like, why did this turn out to be such a piece of crap? Like we didn't even get the enemy within. We just didn't even care. Like we just stopped playing Telltale Games completely. And even just looking at honest reviews from people for some of their like later projects, everybody was just like there were enough people saying, what's up with Telltale Games? This product isn't good. Like it's just getting very sloppy. So again, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, thank you for the amazing years. No, you guys got really sloppy, and it showed in your product. And I quit buying it. And there were enough people who followed suit.
Yep.
And clearly they didn't treat their employees right. So I'm glad that there is somebody who did educated themselves and were like, okay, I can sue them for this, because they should be put under the spotlight and they should receive the consequences for doing something absolutely disgraceful and shitty.
Well said. And honestly, I think like with the downfall of Telltale, it proves the classic Chinese proverb, haste makes waste.
Very much so.
Yeah. And so on that note, speaking of things to be pissed off at game companies about, that actually segues right into the next story, which follows up on, I don't know if we actually did cover this previously, but this was an ongoing issue that was somewhat resolved during one of the weeks in which we were unavailable. Now, to give you kind of the primer in the event that we didn't actually cover this on the show, there's this little game called Fortnite. You may have heard of it. It's been dominating the gaming space for quite some time. And
give me a moment to go vomit.
Oh, yes. And so, Fortnite, for some of you may know, it's basically one of those battleground sort of games. I mean, if you've played PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, then you pretty much have played Fortnite. It's the same basic game, just with its own branding. And it's available on multiple consoles: PC, PS4, Xbox One, even the Switch, and also mobile phones somehow. I'm sure if someone found a way, they could probably play it on a TI-89 calculator somehow, if there was a way to connect it to the internet. But here's the thing with Fortnite. You can play on any of these platforms and could save your progress to your account. But there was one little problem that came up. You see, you had this account that would hold all of your progress, but if you decided to sign in and play Fortnite on PlayStation 4, your account got locked to that system and you weren't allowed to play the game anywhere else. Like, literally, all of your progress, all of the skins you purchased, all of the weapons, all of the levels, you were now forced and locked to limit those to PlayStation 4 and couldn't play them on any other consoles or platforms, much to the annoyance of, well, everyone. So much so that Sony was read the riot act left, right, and center. So much so, and this was something we did cover, in how even Nintendo and Microsoft came together to make fun of them at their sheer resistance of implementing crossplay in any of their games. But lo and behold, Sony finally listened. As of this week, or I believe it was as of last week, they finally decided to start implementing crossplay in Fortnite and released a press release stating that they plan to do so with future games, with Fortnite specifically being the beta. And so, yeah, it took a lot of yelling. It took a lot of moments of Sony putting their foot in their mouth and coming across as really, really arrogant. But now they finally joined the rest of the sensible people in gaming land and have allowed people to actually play their game across platforms and play with other players playing other platforms. And lo and behold, they didn't explode. Now, that kind of gives my opinions there. Where do you guys stand on Sony's resistance to crossplay and the fact that they are now starting to implement it in their titles?
I guess better late than never, but I don't play Fortnite, so this isn't much of a story that affects me in the long run, and I don't really play many other player games online at all, so
Much like Alex, I don't really care for Fortnite all that much either. I think it's awesome that they are finally kind of ending this feud about wanting to do crossplay, because kind of how you described it at the very beginning, Romney, it is absolutely annoying. And this is unfortunately happened with me with Overwatch, is that you start playing on one platform and that information and the time and the money that you have spent putting in towards cosmetics just simply don't get transferred over to a different platform, simply because, well, I mean, Overwatch is, no, actually not Overwatch. You can play on separate platforms, but it's not cross-play. Like, I can't play with anybody on console. So it's just like annoying. Yeah, my accounts are linked, but my level and my cosmetics on my PC account definitely don't match what I have on my Xbox account. And it's frustrating. I mean, obviously I get that I would have a better advantage over somebody playing on, like, if I were to playing on my laptop, I'd have an advantage over somebody playing on console. So I get it. But at the same time, I feel like at least cosmetics can be like everything, like collectibles. I feel like collectibles are something that can be cross-platform regardless of where you're playing, because that stuff is like important to people. I thought I was like one of those odd few where I'm like, ew, I love cosmetics, like, because that's definitely how I play MMORPGs. But and that's probably just the gay part, like the super gay part of me. But I've recently discovered like people really give a damn about that kind of stuff, and not being able to have that transfer over simply because you're playing on Xbox and then you decide you want to switch over to PS4 is just absolutely ridiculous. So I think it's great that is starting to become that can now be a thing, starting with Fortnite. Again, it's not going to make me want to jump on the Fortnite train whatsoever. I just don't care that much about Battle Royale games. But it will be cool to see what else Sony plans on doing in the future in terms of crossplay, and it will just, I don't know, it'll just kind of take you away from the what do I want to say here? Because certain online communities on console can be really, really, really annoying. And let's just say being able to mix it up is going to just spice up the console community. So that's all I got to say.
Well, and at the very least, it'll at least make it easier for third-party companies to actually develop these games, because I know that was, like, the reason this started to explode was that you had other third-party companies chiming in. Most notably was Bethesda, where Bethesda literally told Sony for their upcoming Elder Scrolls Legends games that crossplay had to be implemented or they were just not going to release it on their console, which, again, would hurt them. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like, oh, well, we keep everything exclusive, but if third parties start not wanting to work with you because of arbitrary BS, they're going to go someplace else. I mean, Sony knows this firsthand because that's how they got developers away from Nintendo during the launch of the PlayStation. So it basically would have been a taste of their own medicine here. Well, and I mean, if no one else has much else to really add, I think we've pretty much beaten this horse to death, and not with any purple branded bats at all. I don't play Fortnite. Honestly, when I saw stuff from Fortnite, I confused it with things from Saints Row because of the purple. So and not just Saints Row, but like that game that the people who made Saints Row tried to do that you could pull, that was like another like. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. And as for this next story, I put it at the end of the tech hour, and so as we're coming up on the second hour, this story makes for a nice transition period, as we're now going into what I like to call Lawsuit Palooza. As, I kid you not, so many lawsuits. So many. The first of which involves one particular company by the name of CD Projekt Red. Yes, that beloved Polish company that actually cares about making good, entertaining games that are released as complete experiences at launch. Now, some of you may not know the name itself, CD Projekt Red, but you probably have heard of one of their more successful gaming franchises, and that is The Witcher. And for those of you who haven't known this, even though I've mentioned it before and we've mentioned it before, The Witcher games are based on a series of books by one Andrzej Sapkowski. I mean, the best sort of comparison is that it's basically the Harry Potter equivalent of Poland. So Harry Potter is big all over the world. If you go to Poland, everybody pretty much knows about the Witcher series. And granted, it aims for a much darker audience, although it would be weird seeing Harry Potter characters in the world of The Witcher, but that's something that's for the bowels of DeviantArt to render.
And fanfiction.net.
and Wattpad, because Wattpad. But to get back on point, what many people may not realize is that when CD Projekt Red approached Sapkowski to get the rights to produce games based on his series, they offered him royalties, but he didn't take the royalties. He asked for a lump sum payment up front and thereby sold the rights to the Witcher series, thinking that the video game they were going to make was not going to be very successful, that no one would buy it, and that the medium of video games just wasn't really worth his time. And he came to regret that decision shortly, as we have all seen. Given how much praise that The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt has received, and how much money it has made, and how much money CD Projekt Red is making from The Witcher series, naturally, that's got Sapkowski, well, agitated. How agitated? So much so that he is now threatening to sue Projekt Red unless they give him more money. On October 1st, Sapkowski's legal team filed a demand for further payment from CD Projekt Red, citing Article 44 of Polish copyright law. Now, the article we're going off of is from Destructoid, and they provided a nice little summary of what this copyright law entails. Now, keep in mind, this is in Poland. This isn't in the United States, so this is a whole separate legal system with a whole separate definition of copyright law. So, Article 44 is stated as thus, translated into English thanks to the writer of the article. In the event of gross discrepancy between the remuneration of the author and the benefits of the acquirer of the author's economic rights or the licensee, the author may request the court for a due increase of his or her remuneration. What this translates is, if basically the amount of money that the person who acquired the rights is basically, if the amount of money is much larger than was expected, and the author feels that they deserve a cut of that profits, they can ask the court, hey, they made a lot more money than I expected to off of this idea. They should give me more money. And that is the grounds on which Sapkowski is threatening this lawsuit. Now, looking as for the amount he's actually demanding, I don't know how to pronounce Poland's currency, but it is to the tune of $16,143,353 US, on the grounds that the standard royalty rate for use of intellectual property is between 5 to 15%, and the 60 million PLN, I'm not sure what that stands for. I'm guessing that's for the Polish currency. Around 6% of their reported 1 billion profit from 2017. So he's alleging that he's entitled to about 6% of the profits that they've made off of the Witcher games. Now, the legal filing makes claim that the original terms of contract were violated, meaning that Sapkowski is alleging that he gave them the rights to make the first Witcher game, but did not give them permission to make the second and third Witcher games, and is therefore entitled to the money that they earned. Now, here's where things get a little bit interesting. They submitted this brief to CD Projekt Red and even said, hey, maybe you don't want this lawsuit to go public. Maybe you kind of want to settle out of court so that way it doesn't hurt your PR. But CD Projekt Red decided, no, we're not going to back down. You were an idiot. We offered you royalties. You didn't take them. So no, we're going to fight this. And so that is where things stand in relation to Andrzej Sapkowski and CD Projekt Red. So let's go ahead and open this up to the panel. Where do you guys stand on the legal brief filed by Andrzej Sapkowski? Is he in the right? Do you think he's chasing windmills? Where do you guys stand when viewing this lawsuit?
Yeah, he should have taken the royalties when he had the chance. I know at the time it's the kind of unfortunate would have, could have, should have, that so many people who sell their IP for a quick few bucks suffer. That's why it's a lesson to learn. It's like, don't, well, even if you're not sure that your IP, whatever you have, is going to truly be successful, if you're going to sell it, make sure you protect yourself for a potential long run endeavor. So if something does become big, then you're going to be cut in on it. And even if it means taking a lower cut up front, you never know, right? You just never know. I mean, you can think of the guy who made the little Nike checkmark swish. He got paid $50 for that. Now Nike's like $1 billion company. And now we got this situation. It's like, well, you just took a quick lump sum of cash, and they offered you royalties up front. They were nice, but you didn't take them. So kind of your own fault here. You shot yourself in the foot.
Indeed, and it's especially telling because especially considering how Sapkowski and his legal team said, maybe let's not make this public because we're not going to go public. Whereas CD Projekt Red basically went, yeah, we're making this public. If you're gonna tango with us, you're gonna tango in public. And according to an official statement that was submitted from CD Projekt Red in response to this filing, which they posted as a press release, states that they are willing to negotiate new royalty agreements so long as the original contract they agreed to with Sapkowski remains intact. So it's not even a case where they're fighting saying, hey, you made a mistake, screw you. It's like, hey, we're willing to work with you, but the deal we had is still in place. We're willing to renegotiate, but that's got to stay. And so that's kind of my take from it. It's just how he's just like, oh, maybe you don't want this to go public. Maybe you don't want the bad PR. And CD Projekt Red is basically like, you want to go? Fine, let's go. I mean, it's especially telling because it's like looking at the phrasing of the brief. Now, granted, it's translated from Polish, so I don't know if the translation is accurate, but literally, according to the filing, CD Projekt Red has been given 14 days to comply before they will officially go into litigation, and basically said, okay, pay me my money in 14 days, or we're going to take this to court. And again, CD Projekt Red has basically stated, hey, this is BS. We'll see you in court. We're not going to roll over. And like you said, he was offered royalties. He didn't take them. It's his own damn fault. Yeah. So, Brenton, where do you stand on this whole lawsuit? And where do you stand? Is Sapkowski in the right? Is he fighting windmills? I made that joke already, but that's the thing I'm sticking with.
I think this is definitely a lost cause. You two have said it very very eloquently. I don't think there's really much more that I could add to it. It just sound like, honestly, what I could say is just like, "What, ma? You lost your opportunity." Like, sucks to suck.
Indeed, and it's not even like he's lost a lot of money either, because I know a lot of people have noticed that there's been more people have been reading his books thanks to the games. He's got a television series he's developing with Netflix that he does get royalties from. So honestly, it's a case where the games, even with the lump sum, they're probably the best thing to happen to a series of books ever, because more people know about the stories, more people are going out and reading them. And again, you literally have a Netflix series with Henry frickin' Cavill playing as Geralt that is on the horizon. So honestly, yeah, it may suck that he's not getting money from the games, but dude, more people are reading your books. I mean, take your victories where you can.
No,
Yeah,
really, though. Like, oh my gosh. People, like, money makes people so greedy. And this is just a very concrete image of greed.
Indeed.
Like, be happy with what you have. And people just can't focus on what they have. They have to focus on what they don't have.
Yeah,
and it's sad.
well, yeah, it's especially telling because when you look at interviews with Sapkowski, he's very dismissive of video games and very just like saying, "Oh, I don't." It's like, I think it's not a good medium for storytelling. I mean, my favorite like story we're discussing it was how the author of the Metro book series that the game's Metro 2033 is based on, and he was the smart one who actually said, "Okay, I'll take the royalties. I'll work with these companies because I think they're doing good work." Straight up called Sapkowski a dumbass.
No, but really though, like if I was in that position, and because like I've thought about it time and time again, because I have like, I mean, I haven't written in years, but I have like a little notebook full of ideas. And there's been like this one idea that I have developed probably like at least for 10 years or more. I just the time that I would have had to be able to make drafts and properly write it are completely gone, and I just don't have that time anymore to sit down and properly write and to develop that craft. But if I were to be a published author and like a game company came to me and they said, "We want to create this into a new IP, etc., in this time," I would be like, "Please do. Like, what do I need to do to help you get there?" And I definitely would be like, like that contract I would be signing for royalties would be almost immediately. It's like, yeah, you can use this, but I'm definitely going to get a cut of the profit because it's not your idea, it's mine. I wrote the story. You guys are asking to use it, which I'm going to be more than happy that you can, but I'm going to get some of the pay. You ain't using this for free. So I mean, so really, again, yeah, he is a dumbass. Like, why would you just sell your why would you sell your product and not ask for something in return? It's like, what's a really good way of putting this? Like some real life application. Like it's like local businesses, which is like a huge thing right now, you know, support your local businesses. It's like a local business being like, "Oh, look at this product I made for free. Everybody gets one," like, you know, an Oprah moment. And it's like, you literally are not going to like survive, but thanks. I know where I can come and like literally rob you because you're not going to give a crap.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it remains to be seen because we are dealing with a different country's legal system here. We don't know where Poland's copyright laws more or less stand in terms of whether they favor the companies or the rights holders or the people who acquire those rights. It's a bit of a murky gray area, and
I believe in this case, I probably shouldn't because I'm trying to think of what I heard about it. That is, Poland would be more likely to side with the author in this case because Poland does have a clause in their copyright system. Like I said, don't quote me on this because I heard this secondhand from another YouTube commentator who probably did more research, and even then I'm probably mucking it up here. So Poland's system apparently gives more incentives for people to claim royalties, even though they gave them up. But I'm not totally certain on that 100% either.
Well, yeah, and it was actually something I explained while you were away, discussing the law that he's specifically citing, where if the amount, it's basically under Article 44 of the copyright law in Poland, if the amount of money a person who's purchased the rights is far larger than was expected, the original rights holder can argue to have the courts order more money to be given to them as a result, which, I mean, if that was the only thing Sapkowski was alleging, he's got a bit of a leg to stand on in that regard. But at
I
the
see.
same time, though, he signed the initial contract. If this was a case where neither party expected things to be as successful as they were, and CD Projekt Red was sneakier about it and hadn't offered royalties at the outset, then yeah, he probably would have more of a case. But like anything, you could literally have a contract that signs your rights to choose your own clothing and choose your own meals and literally sign your life away. And yeah, it could violate the law, but if you sign it, you're screwed.
Those are pretty binding, and unlike what we see in the media, simply like tearing it to pieces doesn't nullify it.
Yeah.
Indeed. And speaking of tearing things to pieces, that goes into the other lawsuit. The second of many. I mean, seriously, it's like the universe knew I would be hosting this week.
We're lucky
Yes.
to have you.
Indeed. I'll be the lawyer captain guiding this ship through the stormy seas of legalese.
Yay.
All right, so moving from one threat of a lawsuit to another lawsuit, we have a ruling that recently was handed down in regards to a little franchise that you might have heard of, starring a certain hockey mask wearing giant with a machete, as the screenwriter for the original Friday the 13th has since won the rights to the franchise back from the original director, Sean Cunningham. Now, according to the lawsuit, this was between Victor Miller, who wrote the screenplay for the very first film, and Sean Cunningham, who was the director, and in his arguments is believed to be the creator of the franchise as a whole. And so what we see here is that this had been going on back and forth for a long while, and the judge has since ruled in favor that the screenwriter Victor Miller now is the rightful owner of the Friday the 13th franchise. And this is actually the reason why we haven't actually seen a Friday the 13th movie in excuse me, I'm burping a lot today. But this is the reason why we haven't seen a Friday the 13th movie in a number of years, because this battle was going on and not a lot of people had actually known about it. And so looking at it, let's see here. So apparently Miller was trying to get the rights back under a provision of copyright law that Miller was citing that allows an author to terminate a grant of rights and reclaim ownership 35 years after the work has been published. So given how long it has been since the first film was released to the world, the screenwriter Victor Miller was saying, "Hey, I'm the guy who wrote the screenplay. It's been 35 years since the film was released. I'm taking my rights back." And so looking here, according to the summary opinion from District Court Judge Stefan Underhill, it says, nearly 40 years ago, a screenplay was written about Camp Crystal Lake. The film created from the screenplay went on to significant commercial success. Lurking below that peaceful service, however, was the Copyright Act's termination right, waiting for just the right moment when it would emerge and wreak havoc on the rights to the original screenplay. Now, Miller disputed. Now, the main crux of the dispute is that Sean Cunningham argued that his work was work for hire, meaning, hey, I hired you to write the screenplay. That means we are the authors. We own it. You were just the guy we hired to write it. Whereas Victor Miller argues, no, I am the original rights holder. I'm the guy who came up with this idea. Therefore, I'm the rights holder. And so it seems that the judge ruled in favor of Victor Miller. And as it further states in his summary judgment, it states, I hold that Miller did not prepare the screenplay as work for hire, and that Miller's second termination notice validly terminated the horror's rights to the copyright in the screenplay to Friday the 13th. Specifically, he determines that the screenplay wasn't work for hire, not prepared within that scope of employment, and therefore labor law doesn't require holding the screenwriter was an employee, and instead was an independent contractor. In sum, as it continues, I'm just reading parts from the statement here. In sum, although Cunningham possessed ultimate approval authority over Miller's output, the fact is consistent that with the hiring party's role in both independent contractor and employment relationships. The simple fact that Cunningham provided direction or supervision is also not dispositive. I've never encountered that word before. Although the record points to frequent interaction between Cunningham and Miller, there is little in record to suggest that such interactions frequently consisted of Cunningham exercising close control over Miller's work, and there's nothing in the record that suggests Cunningham controlled the details of his creative expression or otherwise directed the performance of his daily activities. Despite a lack of detailed control over Miller's expression or confining control over Miller's work habits, however, Cunningham's discussions with Miller and approval authority did broadly affect the aesthetic content of the screenplay. And apparently this decision has been pending for over a year, and it's interfered with any new sequels or video games or any other derivative works from being made. And so what this means is that Miller will control the rights inside the United States, while the producers, including Cunningham, will control the rights outside the domestic market, where termination isn't really a thing. And so this is pretty much where things stand. Where do you guys stand on this whole dispute? And like, what are your guys' thoughts on the fact that Jason Voorhees was caught in the middle of a custody battle?
Really interesting. It's funny to think of Jason in a custody battle. Guess all those years at the bottom of the lake were not easy.
Indeed.
If we're going to go off this theme of a custody battle, I'm glad there's enough people out there who are like, he deserves love too.
You may want to stay off Tumblr.
Oh God, yeah, I don't even dare go on Tumblr. Anyway, go ahead, Alex. We're not going to tangent off to Tumblr.
Oh God, this is interesting. I never knew this story about Friday the 13th. That there's, I'd been hearing about this lawsuit for over the course of the year, mostly in relation to how it's been affecting the video game of it. And unfortunately, that's also kind of why the game is supposed to be such a mess right now, because of this lawsuit, because of the judgment. They wanted to push it out before the judgment because they didn't know where it's going to go. And so the game's an absolute buggy mess as a result. And obviously this will affect the game going forward in relation to what they can feature and what they can't. I thought this is really interesting, though. Also in terms of just the film, because you don't usually hear like indie films crafted like this way. It's always usually like, especially a horror movie, because horror movies are super cheap and easy to make. They're usually like the labors of love between a couple of roguish indie filmmakers, and that's how I always kind of perceived Friday the 13th. I always perceived it similar to the making of Halloween, a bunch of film students getting together to make their own little movie here. Apparently not.
Yeah, so basically you're saying that usually when one filmmaker and another filmmaker love each other really a lot.
Oh my Lanta. What the hell?
In this case, the filmmakers of Friday the 13th, they were in love with each other, had Jason, and now they're getting a divorce and had to fight for custody of Jason.
It's an apt metaphor. It really is. Now, there is an interesting aspect of the article that brings an interesting point where the original screenplay, at least when you're looking at the conceit of Jason in the very, very first film, so before the hockey mask, he was basically conceived as the young boy who drowned at Camp Crystal Lake due to irresponsible counselors. And spoiler alert, for a really old horror film that I think everybody already knows the ending of, it caused the mother to start going on a murderous rampage, killing as many counselors of Camp Crystal Lake as much as she could. And so that raises the question, okay, well, if Miller has the rights to the original screenplay, although he did not work on the subsequent ones, where does this leave the character of Jason? Does this mean that we're going to have a case where, okay, Miller can make his own series of movies where Jason is still just that young boy who died at the bottom of Camp Crystal Lake? Or are we going to see them try to work out some agreement where you still have Jason, as most people know him, the giant hulking monster with the machete? And apparently that part hasn't been decided, since Miller was the writer of the original, but not any of the sequels.
Right. I remember I was listening to Midnight's Edge podcast about this, and they were largely speculating that mostly this would affect anything relating to mostly the first movie. So that would mean like Camp Crystal Lake would probably be out. Mrs. Voorhees would have to be out, right? But most of Jason's backstory would probably not be able to be used in future films, or whatever, right? But in terms of like the hockey mask player, and obviously, again, this is their speculation on it, I think, but the hockey mask wearing machete killer would probably be fair game for everybody else. Just most of the stuff from originating from the first film, like Crystal Lake and Mrs. Voorhees, would probably be on the chopping block.
Yeah, and honestly, to be honest, I think that's honestly the only part people really care about is the hockey mask wearing, machete wielding behemoth. I mean, when most people think of Jason, they're imagining Jason from the sequels. Nobody really thinks about the deformed first Jason that appears at the end of the film that comes out of the lake and pulls the counselor under as part of a fake out. I remember that scene vividly because that was going to be an episode of Monster Clash before I realized that the remake wasn't actually a remake. And so, yeah, that does raise a few interesting things because although Miller may have won the rights from the original screenplay, the judge himself stated like this was regarding the original screenplay. The adult monstrous Jason is not presented in this case, meaning that the companies that include Cunningham still have the rights to the Jason that is actually the more profitable one, the one that everybody recognizes, the one that people dress up as for Halloween. And so this is although this ruling means that Miller owns the rights, I don't see this being over anytime soon in regards to future movies or future derivative adaptations. There's still more battles to fight. And not just with Pinhead and Freddy Krueger either. Yeah, because that's the other reason why we never got that sequel. We were supposed to get a sequel to Freddy vs. Jason with Pinhead, but because of this lawsuit, can't happen. Although, probably for the best.
Yeah.
Although that would have been a weird movie.
Yeah, but that's kind of the point. I mean, Freddy vs. Jason is meant to be weird in and of itself, and although it's highly unlikely, I would pay to see Freddy vs. Jason versus Ash. I mean, yeah, we have the comics, but come on. Freddy versus Jason versus Ash from the Evil Dead. Who wouldn't want to see that in theaters?
Yeah, that'd be interesting, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, at least
I'm just not a huge horror movie fan. I'm not a huge fan of blood, so that's
a fair point. Although it still definitely makes more sense than Freddy versus Jason versus Snuggle, which was a thing for a while.
Okay.
Rest in peace, Mad TV.
Oh, I miss Mad TV.
Yep.
I have a coworker. I love her to death. I love working with her. She always loves to imitate Stewart from the show.
Ah, yes. Many memories. Many, many memories. Unfortunately, we're now having to take another tour down lawsuit lane as we discuss the other.
Well, hold on. One final thought on the whole the whole Jason fiasco here. Just because I mentioned Midnight's Edge, I know I need to go watch them again, but they actually had a series of little short documentaries about covering this lawsuit. They haven't made anything new other than their podcast in regards to the outcome of this lawsuit. So probably go watch those, everybody. So there's my early recommendation for the night. Go watch Midnight's Edge coverage of this lawsuit.
Yes, they'll probably be able to give you a lot more information than we were able to during this brief dalliance. And I'm not even going to try to bother with the alliteration. I don't know where I was going with that, but if you want the full story, there's where you can go. And now, speaking of going, we're once again going into the other major lawsuit that broke last week. And boy, was this was a complex thing to actually look into when I was crafting the agenda for tonight. But here is what was going on. We have one Richard Meyer who had a YouTube channel called Diversity and Comics. And basically, he had set out to make his own comics and had run a successful crowdfunding campaign and had secured a deal with a publisher, Antarctic Press. As for what happened next, this is where things are kind of muddy, at least as far as I was able to uncover, as there's apparently been, around the time this comic was being created, there was a bit of a feud between Richard Meyer and one Mark Waid, who many of you may recognize as kind of a major established writer for Marvel Comics. Now, according to the lawsuit that has been filed, Richard Meyer is suing Mark Waid on the grounds of tortious interference with contract and defamation. Now, the story of the brief goes as follows, is that Meyer had secured a publishing contract with Antarctic Press, and according to the filing, Meyer alleges that Mark Waid had called Antarctic Press and given them false information that led to the termination of this publishing agreement. And therefore he is suing Mark Waid on the grounds of, hey, you cost me my job and cost me employment and made it so that I couldn't publish my comic, even though you had no right to interfere, all because you disagreed with a few things I said. And thus is the nature of this lawsuit. That is what Meyer is accusing Mark Waid of doing, and those are the grounds in which he is suing him. As for the full story itself, this is insane. Like, this is pretty weird. Now, full disclosure, I have not seen any of the videos that Meyer has posted. I've never even heard of diversity in comics before, so this is my first exposure to it. But looking at it, let's see. I'm actually trying to pull up the article here. So it raised enough funding, and apparently it was a channel based on criticizing trends in the comics industry regarding things like virtual signaling and the heavy politicization, if that's a word, of the comics medium. And so, according to what I could find, Mark Waid kind of gave him the challenge of, hey, you criticize comics all the time, but you provide no solution. And so Meyer decided, okay, let's provide a solution. Let's create my own comic. And so he raised funds, got artists, got writers, and decided to actually start publishing this comic. And that's kind of where we kind of stand here. There's way too much to go into. This would take a whole 2 hours in and of itself to summarize. So based on kind of the limited amount of time we've all had to go over the story, where do you guys kind of stand on this lawsuit?
Well, let's see. Hold on, I need to pull up the article again. There it is. So the looks like Antarctic Press put out this sort of unofficial statement on, I guess, Facebook based on the icons. It says, "This is an untrue story. Please do not spread it. Nobody at AP contacted Marvel. Mark Waid did not bully anyone at our company, though he did call and express concern. No letters were written between us and Marvel. Mark shed some more light on the situation, and other factors came into play that do not involve any of the staff or freelancers at any other company that led us to our decision. We wish the Jawbreakers team success in their next phase. It's now bigger than we could have handled. They've lined up another publisher who could get them into a bigger venue than we could have." So just by that sounds, it sounds like at the very least he called them. Obviously what he said, nobody but them knows, but depending on the man's influence, that could definitely make or break somebody. Again, depending largely on Wade's influence in the industry and how much weight he can throw around. There is a bit of an element that's creepily similar to close to blackballing here, but obviously that's something we'd have to see as the lawsuit plays out. Just again, because I don't, comics are really outside my area of specialty. I don't know much about the industry, and I don't know heavy hitters. Of course I know Stan Lee, but everybody else does, because he's, the legends of Marvel comics there. But there's obviously other business insiders there that probably would know better than I do.
Yeah, and part of the reason what made this lawsuit hard for me to kind of analyze is that this isn't a clear-cut case where one is clearly the villain and one is clearly the hero. This seems to just simply be a lawsuit between two particularly unlikable people. And I was even looking at the comments, because I first came across this story through an analysis of the briefing provided by Leonard French, everyone's favorite copyright attorney. And even looking in the comments, you see people that are split down the middle, kind of going back and forth, some pointing out that Mark Waid has a very colorful history of basically trying to intimidate people to get his way, such as punching holes in walls, breaking phones, and intimidating people, going after indie creators, which is what they saw as the point of comparison. But then people would also counter of some of Meyer's unpopular opinions regarding comics and regarding how he kind of harassed certain particular female comic creators. And so this is one of those cases where there is no clear good guy or bad guy here. And one point that actually is a pretty good point is the fact of it's the specific crux of this lawsuit, and that is specifically the term. I have to look it up again so the specific term, and that is the tortious interference with contract and defamation. And so that's kind of the key thing here, since the idea of being able to interfere with someone's contract is the idea is that, okay, you've got to have some sort of sway or power, something that could actually be proven as an example of intimidation. But because Mark Waid doesn't work for Antarctic Press, it's hard to say how much sway he actually has or what he could actually do. Were they actually intimidated by Mark Waid, or was there maybe some other factor that Antarctic Press has yet to really disclose? We don't really know, and honestly, it probably will only really come to light if this actually goes to trial. But it also seems like a case neither side is going to blink. This is like the kind of lawsuit most people think of when they think of lawsuits, where it's people suing each other and basically everyone's got their blades out, everybody's ready to fight, and no one's really seeming to be functioning with a level head here.
Yeah.
And so it's a tough issue. I mean, on the one hand, I do feel bad for Meyer. I do think it's kind of bad that if someone disagrees with your opinion, you should still have the right to seek employment. You should still have the right to be able to pursue creative endeavors. Just because you disagree with someone doesn't give you the right to basically ruin their lives and make it so they can't get any work. And so on the other hand, I understand that, hey, that's not okay. Attack the arguments, not the person. Don't ruin their life. But on the other hand, I can also understand where a company may come from of, oh, this creator has some very controversial opinions. Do we want to deal with the PR nightmare? Are we going to be able to pay the people whose job it is to handle the public relations to sort the stuff out? This is as sticky as the lawsuits get. And so it's too much even for me, Mr. Lawyer Mode. Yeah, and so I'm even looking at the comments, which, again, Leonard French, the way he comes down, looking at his analysis, he came down on the side of Meyer and kind of arguing, hey, Mark Waid is kind of throwing a tantrum. He went too far. He had no right to call Antarctic Press, especially considering that he doesn't work for them and has no business contacting them regarding a disagreement he has with a particular creator. And so, yeah, it's a tough call. It really is, especially considering that I don't know the full story. I fully admit that. But at the same time, I can at least understand that, hey, maybe calling someone who is a prospective employer or someone who's established a contract, even if you don't have any sway, it's a bit scuzzy.
Yeah, that's why I said, reading the fact that he did call them, that has some real shadiness to it. That feels like he could be actually actively trying to blackball them.
Yeah, especially considering that he publicly disclosed the fact that he was going to call them. So he publicly announced the fact of, hey, I'm going to call these people and let them know what they're getting into. So not only did he call them, he declared the intent, and the social media screen caps corroborate this. So this is going to get ugly. I don't know what way it's going to fall, but at least we're looking at the lawsuit. It's being done at a federal level, and so Richard Meyer is demanding damages that are at minimum to the value of $75,000, which is how much you have to demand or how much has to be at stake in order for the case to be filed and tried at a federal level. And so it's hard to say. I don't know the full story. I'll probably have to do more research if we decide to cover this again. But this, to kind of end on my opinion here, these are the kind of bad lawsuits that people want to avoid, where neither side looks good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Brenton, you've been kind of quiet. Do you have any opinions or any thoughts to share regarding this lawsuit?
It just sounds like one giant mess.
Pretty much as we said, giant mess.
Yep.
I look forward to seeing how this all pans out, because I'm pretty sure that as new developments are shared and posted to the internet, we will be there to report it. So I'll probably kick back, read whatever news pops up in our feed, and look forward to seeing what happens next. But right now, this just looks like a gigantic mess, and I best of luck to both sides, I guess. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's no other way to say it. I mean, honestly, we'll if we hear about a resolution or some sort of settlement or escalation, we will definitely report on it as the story develops. But looking at this, it's a mess. I mean, this is the night of succinct summaries, people. It's a mess.
Absolutely.
All right, and speaking of messes, let's see. Let's move on to something that may be a mess for a different reason, but it's something on a bit of a lighter note. Let's get away from the courtroom for a while. How about for the rest of the night? I don't know about you. I mean, I can't be the lawyer all the time.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, let's try to end the night on a lighter note.
Yes. Although these next few stories are lighter, they're at least things that open the floor for speculation. Now, in the agenda I crafted, I kind of just raised the question of, could these be movies? As we had two major video game franchises that have been announced in development for, well, movie adaptations. Let's start with one that actually has a story and lore to work with, as it was announced this week that we are going to be getting, or at the very least, we are hearing about the development of a live-action film based on Mega Man. Now, for those of you who aren't sure what Mega Man is, in which case you're either a time traveler or you've been living under a rock for most of the entire past couple of decades, but Mega Man, classic gaming mascot created by Capcom, better otherwise known as Rockman in Japan, also goes by the moniker the Blue Bomber. Basically, he's a robot who can take powers from other robots in order to better kill other robots. That is my oversimplification of Mega Man as a concept. But Capcom has officially announced that we are getting a live-action Mega Man movie, and that it's going to be directed by the people. Actually, it's going to be directed and written by the directors of Paranormal Activity 4, Henry Yost and Ariel Schumann. However, and that information was just barely confirmed, but that's all we know so far, is that they have a director and writer team, and it's going to be live action. So let's kind of open up the floor. Where do you guys see the possible directions of a live action Mega Man film?
Weird choice of directors. Sorry, go ahead, Brinton.
Oh no, no, you're fine. You've been going first a lot, so I'll give you a quick break.
Oh.
Especially since it sounds like you're going on the director's side of things, because I was going to go on the writing side of things. I'm curious to see what kind of story they can craft, just because of like how many Mega Man video games there are. I know Mega Man is a franchise that my brother-in-law loves very dearly, and he has helped me better understand its story, and I've been able to play a little bit of like the old school Mega Man with him, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was super fun and entertaining. And so this is actually a story that he had texted me while I was at work. So I'm actually pretty impressed that we're talking about it tonight as well, considering that we just barely got the story hours. Actually, it's probably been a good 12 hours since we've gotten the story. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that I'm curious as to what could be crafted. This is something that I would definitely like to see. Just because I'm always a big fan of video game movies. I mean, yeah, some are flops, but video game movies aren't going to get any better unless we try and continue to create them and learn from previous past mistakes. So it will be cool to see what comes from what has been announced.
Yep, and looking here, apparently a couple more details that I just uncovered. In addition to the directors, we also know what companies are producing it. It's being produced by Sheridan Entertainment, which is the company that was behind the recent Planet of the Apes films, and it's also being produced by Masaoka, who helped produce the Hollywood Death Note adaptation, and as some of you really obscure TV nerds may know, he played Hero in the TV series Heroes. And so we also know that, hey, it's someone who actually has contacts in Japan and may be working very closely with Capcom to make sure that this is something that's on brand. And Alex, you were also starting at the same time, so I'll yield the floor to you.
All right. Yeah, just interesting choice of directors. I'm trying to see if they... I don't think I saw Paranormal Activity 4. I think I tapped out after 3. Trying to see what else they've done. Oh, if they've done anything else. A lot of goodness, there's a lot of credits. It looks like not much else beyond Paranormal Activity. So that's really weird choice of directors, considering their only other claim to fame is the fourth entry in a long-running franchise of found footage films.
Yeah, but at the same time, horror is very much a gateway genre for a lot of filmmakers. That's often where a lot of these genre filmmakers get their start. I mean, I believe that's how James Cameron kind of got his start. That's how Wes Craven got his start. Most notably, James Wan, who started out with Saw, is now working on action films like Fast and the Furious, and even rumored to be directing the reboot of the Resident Evil movies. So it's not too far-fetched, because, again, horror is a bit of a gateway genre for a lot of these genre filmmakers. But
yeah,
and
Cameron got started with Roger Corman, so not exclusively horror, just a lot of Corman's B films over the many years that Corman's been doing it.
Indeed, and so it's also a case of maybe there's something there that the people realize, and it also could be a simple case of, hey, these are two unknowns, they're cheaper to hire, we don't have to worry about the Directors Guild as much because they haven't proven themselves yet. But it could go in either direction, especially considering that it's going to be live action. And honestly, to kind of get into my thoughts on it, there's a lot of directions you could go with something like Mega Man, especially when you consider kind of the stories that inspired it. Because there are, at least, and this is kind of pulling from the anime side of things, from the influences for Mega Man, it drew influence from two major sources. Although, yeah, they had the gameplay mechanics, but as for the lore, the two major things that inspired it, there was first, of course, Astro Boy, also known as Tetsuwan Atomu, and then there was also Shinzo Ningen Casher, which was also the other major influence, which is where we got the idea of the robotic dog companion coming from Cashern, which was actually a post-apocalyptic robotics series from the 70s. You wouldn't think it because it's a 70s anime, but it's actually a really dark series. And even given how dark some of the Mega Man games have gone, not just Mega Man X, but even some of the later series when Inafune was with the company, there's a lot you could actually do with it, especially if you're going the action film route. And so my only hope is that they don't go too dark, where they try to be super gritty and grimdark and still kind of keep some levity, because, well, action movies are supposed to be fun. They're not supposed to leave you feeling depressed.
Yeah. Do you think they'll try to like make an effort to make because Mega Man's always kind of a kid character, he's always kind of a young boy, so you think they'll try and go for that effort to make a sort of kid Mega Man here, maybe a little bit like in the vein of Star Kid from the 90s?
I could kind of see it if they kind of embrace the Tezuka sort of influence of, I mean, especially, let's take a look at the character of Rockman. So before he became Mega Man, he was just simply a robotic butler named Rock. And after all of these other robots that Dr. Light and Dr. Wily created, he basically said, hey, we really need to do something about these robots. You have all this machinery here. Rather than create a new robot master Dr. Wily control, give me the augments. I'll go and fight these robots for the sake of mankind. And so there's something that could really be done here when you consider even how dark Astro Boy went, where Astro as a robot is just, he looks like a kid, but he still kind of has that, I can see, even if it's like an older actor playing Mega Man, if they kind of keep to that kind of innocent heart, the idea of, oh, well, Mega Man's not just a robot created with the intent to destroy. He was a robot made to be basically a butler, a helper, who of his own volition is saying, hey, we need to do something about these robot masters. Give me the weapons. I'll go fight so we can keep mankind safe. It's kind of like that sort of that Captain America, that Superman sort of thing. That's something they need to get right, regardless of what approach. That's something they need to kind of keep consistent, is that Mega Man as a character isn't fighting because he's programmed to, it's his choice. As for them doing a kid route, I can see it if they decide to skew younger, which, again, has worked out for certain franchises. I mean, the film I didn't expect to like with the Goosebumps film that we got with Jack Black, if they kind of aim for that same audience, but just basically make it, oh, well, it's an action film for kids, I can see it working. Yep. And so, given that we've more or less discussed Mega Man, let's go into the other video game movie that was announced. And I'm sorry, but there is no other way I can say it, as the next video game announced for adaptation is Dance Dance Revolution!
Wow. Just wow.
Yes. Of all the games, I mean, we covered the frickin' Tetris movie, but we're apparently getting a movie based on Dance Dance Revolution. Now, the company that is producing it, it was founded by a former president of Warner Brothers, Greg Silverman, called Stampede, is partnering with Branded Pictures Entertainment and Konami to develop a film based on DDR. And according to the trade news sources, both Deadline and Variety, the article we're going off of is from Anime News Network, the project will explore a world on the brink of destruction where the only hope is to unite through the universal language of dance. What the?
Because sometimes you
sounds
just gotta
amazing.
dance.
I mean, I can see this working if they don't take themselves seriously. If they do it as an intentionally goofy comedy that is like, and I'm not meaning like in the whole, like the dance movie, like epic movie parodies, where it's just a case of, like if they just basically decided to basically make a techno version of Lord of the Dance, I can see it working.
No, I hope it's super serious. I want them to go all out.
I kind of want to see a super grim, dark DDR movie.
I'm not kidding. When
I
this was
believe
shared,
you.
when this was shared to our newsfeed, and I said I totally want to see this. I'm not kidding. This better not be like other movies that I was super excited to see that got canceled. This better legit happen.
Honestly, I mean, okay, if we do get the serious one, like just thinking of even the music that you've seen in DDR, I mean, the thing that comes to mind, I'm just like, okay, one way I can see this working if it's gritty and serious. I mean, I'm getting like the Matrix Revolutions, like rave scene sort of vibe for like one of the action scenes. Since it's not going to be battle, it's going to be like a dance scene. And I can just imagine like them trying to do something synchronizing with Max 300 from DDR Max, which is still kind of regarded as one of the hardest songs in the game. I mean, even when you slow it down to the slowest speed, it is still freaking hard. My siblings and I, we could never conquer it. Even on the slowest setting, we could never conquer it. That's how hard it is. But I'm just, how? I mean, and it just...
I hope this is live action because I totally want to be a part of this. I want to be an actor in this film because I like the other day, I know Dance Dance Revolution and Just Dance aren't really like played at all the same and are two very different veins of dancing games, but oh my gosh, I totally slayed Just Dance a couple of days ago and I'm getting those dancing vibes. I want to be the DDR hero, as I've just put into our chat, so hashtag DDR hero, and I'm gonna go save the world with my seriously awesome slaying dance moves.
Problem is, someone's already kind of beat you to it with making both a movie and video game where they save the world through dance. It's called Moonwalker.
Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to be even more fabulous than that, so it's happening.
I mean, good luck.
Can somebody find me an agent? Anybody who's listening,
let's hope it. Let's get Brenton his own dance movie, and then it could become a video game too.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I can see, like, there may be a way I can see this working where it even could be serious, but this would be like a bit of a stretch where you'd either have to go and treat it as just a dance film that just has the DDR name and uses the visuals, or another way I could see it is where you kind of create it like it's a sports movie about a fictional sport, where it just so happens that the sport is dance. And so I can definitely see, like, if you go kind of colorful with it, where it could be serious, but you still keep the kind of the colorful visuals, I can see it somewhat working. I mean, I know there's even some anime that kind of explore this concept. They're not coming to mind. Like, I know there was, like, literally a tokusatsu-inspired anime that basically does the same thing, but with breakdancing. I mean, honestly, the only example that comes to mind was this anime, well, technically this animation that was inspired by anime that Gatorade produced, where you had these Dragon Ball Z style battles, but they were rap battles. So you still had like the explosions, the ki blasts and everything, but instead of throwing punches and kicks, it was that these rappers were rapping back and forth, and each time they dropped their rhymes, that would basically create these huge shonen effects. And so something like that, I can see working with something like DDR, where you basically treat the competitions of the dances and basically give it kind of the shonen anime treatment. Like, embrace the ridiculousness is my point. Embrace the fact that, yeah, this is probably an incredibly ridiculous idea, and have fun with it.
If these flashing lights are not exactly like the live action Speed Racer, then this movie is getting a 0 out of 10. Not enough lights.
Not enough lights.
Not enough Speed Racer effects.
It needs
If this
one-
movie does not make me feel like I am on the effects of LSD, then I'm giving this a negative 10 out of 10.
This movie better give me a seizure or I'm gonna sue, damn it.
Yeah. And
I
honestly,
better be leaving the theater on a stretcher to the nearest ER.
or honestly, it'll probably come out normally and have all those seizure things, but it'll basically be like, oh, well, I could have enjoyed the movie, but for some reason they just had to keep all the frames like dark, like how they did in like how in anime when the things are getting really bright and flashy, they'll always like darken the frames. Like, I mean, yeah, it was enjoyable, but did the movie had to be that dark the whole time? I mean, come on.
Thank you, Electric Soldier Porygon.
Yep. And honestly, like, it's a dumb idea, but at the same time, I'm with Brendan on this. I kind of want to see what this turns into, because it's just how. I mean, how? I mean, for all we know, this could end up being the surprise video game movie that actually works, because Lord knows that Konami's had struggles to make things work. I mean, and again, this is coming from someone who actually likes the Silent Hill movies. They're not perfect, but I find them enjoyable. But
yeah, there are Silent Hill movies. How did I not remember that?
Because they're not that memorable. You're not the only one.
Okay,
And so, yeah, like, I like the Silent Hill movies. They're not perfect, but it's kind of Konami. They've been hit or miss. Castlevania, as a Netflix series, that's been like their one success. But that's more due to the fact that they aren't as involved with Castlevania as they were with the Silent Hill movies. So it's just this still hurts my brain. I mean, what's next? Are we gonna? I mean, honestly, like, is this gonna lead to a cinematic universe for all the other musical games? Are we gonna get a Marshall Beat movie? Are we gonna get a Karaoke Revolution movie? And given that one of the major music artists who did music for DDR was a huge fan of Zoids, is this gonna have a crossover with Zoids as part of the Bemani Konami music cinematic universe?
Holy shit, I'd love that. I've not seen Zoid since it was on Cartoon Network. I miss it.
MCU, so I'm not entirely sure that I could handle a more cinematic universes right now.
Yeah, honestly, like, I just said, like, okay, first we get DDR, then if that does well, we get Para Para Paradise, the movie, then we get Marshall Beat, the movie, then we get Karaoke Revolution, the Netflix series.
Can Just Dance be a part of that? That would be an epic film.
Yeah, it's just... I mean, Marshall Beat is more of a game that could be done as a movie, because Marshall Beat basically is DDR, but it's... To kind of give the explanation, Marshall Beat was basically Konami saying, hey, you like DDR? Want to combine it with Taibo? Marshall Beat. Basically had the same music sort of things, except instead of stepping on the dance pad, you wore these sensors on your wrists and your legs, and you basically punched and kicked to the rhythm. I mean, all you need is a cameo from Billy Blanks and you're good. And and Para Para Paradise, only in Japan. I can see that movie only doing well in Japan. The US, people don't really know what Para Para is in the US. Even people in the anime community are kind of divided on what actually Para Para is. Because I've yet to find a coherent definition.
Sounds like we need to fly to Japan just for a single viewing of a movie and then fly back.
Well, I mean...
movie ticket ever!
Well, I mean, this is coming from a group that literally contemplated traveling to Japan to see the Evangelion train. So, I mean, we'll travel for a movie, we'll travel for a train. We've traveled, we've made plans for less.
Okay, well, let me know when we're flying and I'll be at the airport.
Yeah, and well, we're actually coming up on time, so I'll have to go ahead and cut off the remaining 3 stories, since I think it's good that we're ending on this nice bit of silliness, given how much of a downer the other stories were. So we'll go ahead and kind of wind things down. So if people want to get a hold of us to kind of see if they either agree or disagree with our opinions on the lawsuits and the other stories we covered, if you have your own pitch for a DDR or Mega Man movie or some sort of crossover thereof, I don't know how that would work, but somehow it could
DDR be Mega Man, hell yes.
I mean, we got DDR Mario mix, so it could happen. But let's go around the panel. So if people want to get a hold of us for our various opinions, Brenton, can they find you?
They can find me here at YouTube. I am BPV Gaming. I think that's like one of the very few times I've actually said my channel name correctly.
Yay!
For all those who are turning in for the first time or who do not know me, I am the creator of the Triad Let's Plays. I choose a fun little theme and play 3 video games back to back to back that fit that theme. And I am also doing a coverage of Final Fantasy XIV in its entirety as new content comes out. I've currently been on a little bit of a hiatus, and I am hopefully going to return back to the YouTube scene to continue on with the new Triad Let's Play. I'm just working on it. But you can also find me on Twitter at bvolley01. Again, that's BVALLI01. Feel free to treat me to a nice dinner, even though I am very much married, and tweet me or send me a DM. I mean, I feel like I'm fairly active on the internet, and I love to hear from you all. I love to I love just interacting with every single one of you. So don't be scared. I really don't bite. I may get a little sassy, but I don't bite.
All right. And Alex, if people want to get a hold of you for your various opinions, if they want to somehow commission you to direct the Mega Man DDR crossover movie somehow, where can people find you?
You can find me on YouTube. Shadow Blizzard 3000 is my channel. And I do anime content and occasional gaming content as well. And if you want to follow me on social media and always be alert to when new videos go up, then follow me on Twitter. My handle is at AlexJShort.
All right, and if people want to get a hold of me and look at my content, my handle is Studio Ghost Utah. That is my handle both on YouTube and on Facebook. I upload to both when I actually have something to upload. You can also find me on Instagram under Romney Does Art, which I really need to do more of, because, again, I only have bagels and cats on there and the one painting I've done. So hopefully I'll be doing more art in the future, but stay tuned for later in the month. More on that later. And I am also on Twitter, which is probably the best way to get a hold of me, to send me suggestions for things to review on my channel, and that handle is Romney Reviews. So you can find me on Twitter, Romney Reviews, Instagram, Romney Does Art, Studio Ghost Utah is my handle everywhere else. And as for this week's Romney's recommendation, given that we are now in the month of October, naturally we all have horror on our minds. And so for this week, I'm actually presenting an interesting little short film that I uncovered while doing research for a video I'm working on. It's a short film called Dave. Now, here's why this is interesting. Because this is actually a proof of concept film that is basically a pitch for a Resident Evil television series. So not inspired, this was meant to be an actual TV series set in the universe of Resident Evil, specifically taking place around the time of the early bizarre murders that occurred in the Arklay Mountains. The original title of the show was going to be called Arklay and follow a detective who's investigating these mysterious cases. It's a very engaging short film. It's really short, but in the short time you have what is probably the best adaptation of Resident Evil I've ever seen, better than any of those crappy Paul W.S. Anderson movies. And for all we know, nobody's picked up the pitch yet. So that's this week's Romney's recommendation. You can find it on Vimeo. You can find it on YouTube. It's the short film Day, directed and created by Sean Liebert. I apologize if I didn't pronounce that correctly. So that's this week's Romney's recommendation is Dave, a.k.a. Arklay, a.k.a. #WeWantArklay. And if you want to get a hold of the show directly, here's the ways you can actually engage with the show, that is Geek News Reviews and Opinions. We have our RSS feed. If you want to listen to us on your morning commute or your evening commute, I mean, it's morning somewhere, it's evening somewhere, who knows? You can find us on the RSS feed on geekyweek.podomatic.com. We're also on iTunes and on Google Play. You can find us on Twitter at GeekyNRO, and you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/geekynro. Now, if you want to send us stories, suggestions, feedback, if you want to actually email us directly, we also have an email for the show, geekyweek@gmail.com. Those are the ways you can get a hold of the show directly, and you all know how to get in touch with each of us. So, for me, for Alex, for Brenton, and for Adam, who we wish a speedy recovery, that's it for this show tonight. thank you all for watching.
No one can see you bowing.
Well, on the live stream they can.
Yeah, but not on the RSS feed. Yes, 3 S's.
Yes. And on that note, we push the stop button.